Start by turning the switch from auto to off, and then let's just undo the 2 screws that so we can remove this cover. With the cover off, I'm checking, and sure enough, we've got 240 volts coming down here. So I got to turn off the power. So there at the breaker box, I turn off the power, and then I verify it again at the switch just to make sure I'm safe. I wanted to stop and point out here that we only have to deal with the output power from this switch. This is the input power coming in from the wall. We already know that's turned off, and you can see that the wire is 120 over here, another wire going 120 volts over there. The ground is hooked up to the plate, so you can't actually see that wire. This is the output of the switch that goes to the motor, and you can tell by the cabling. This is a 120 volt wire right here. The white one is another 120 volt wire, it's right there, and then the ground wire goes up to that plate up there. That's all we have to worry about. We don't have to touch the input power, which is here. This is the output power. That's all we have to disconnect to replace the motor. So let's start by taking off one of the 120 volt wires, and the white one is the second 120 volt wires. And now I'm removing the ground screw. Then there's a clamp that holds the cable up against there. So I'm just loosening the clamp so I can pull the cable out, and then I can pull it out through the compressor as well. Now there's 4 bolts that hold the motor to the plate. So I'm just undoing all 4 of these bolts. I have a pulley remover, but I couldn't find it, so I just quickly tried to softly and easily tap this pulley off of there. It took a while just playing it careful, but I was able to get it off of there. With the cable off, or with the pulley off and everything, I could clean up the top there a little bit, and just as I got it cleaned, the FedEx guy showed up with the new motor, so that was perfect timing. And sometimes the hardest part of any job is just getting the new part out of the box. I started by putting a cable clamp. It's just a retainer to keep the electrical cable from falling all over the place. Put that on there and then test fitted the cable. Now I stripped back about 6 inches of the outer insulation, and this has these little white fiber things on the inside of this cable. It's because it's from an old pool light, so those are there to add strength when you're pulling the wires through a long distance. And I cut back the insulation on each wire about 3/4 of an inch because I'm going to use wire nuts afterwards, and I always like to have my wires a little longer with the wire nuts. There's a green screw down there. That is the ground. And anytime I'm doing a high voltage connection with a little crimp-on connector like this, I like to go ahead and solder it just to make sure that I have a good connection. Now the trouble is feeding that back in and getting it in position and getting the ground screw started. That was kind of the toughest spot in this whole thing. If you look on the side of any motor, it's got a wiring diagram. That'll help you figure out what you need to wire to what. And in this case, this motor is both reversible and dual voltage, I believe. So once you have the wire nuts on to the correct wires, you can tuck those wires all back down in the box, throw your cover back on the top, and button up the cover with a couple screws. Now I laid the keyway on top of the shaft, tapped the new pulley back in. I made a mistake. I've ordered a motor that was the wrong size shaft, and luckily I had a pulley that was the right diameter and the right shaft size for this motor. Otherwise I would have been in trouble. So I tightened up the 2 locking nuts, the keyways there to keep it from spinning, installed the 4 bolts back in there to hold the motor back in place, tighten those up. Then I can pull the wiring back through that cable clamp, snug it back up so it doesn't go anywhere, put the ground wire back on, and both of the 2 hot leads back into the switch. With that done, it's just a matter of putting the 2 screws back on the cover. Then I can turn it back from the off position to the auto position again. Go over and flip the breaker back on. And we have a running compressor. That's it. Thanks for watching.